Hey everyone, welcome. Let's jump right into today's explainer. We're looking at the actual mechanics of our inner lives today. And to do that, I want you to picture a scale in your mind. Not the kind you step on in the bathroom, but a finely tuned balancing scale used to measure weight. You know, we spend so much of our time trying to figure out exactly how to act in the modern world, like when to laugh, when to be strict, when to just let go. Well, our source material today offers a truly fascinating look at this. It proposes that the secret to character isn't about choosing one side or the other. It's about mastering the scale itself.
So let's kick things off with a question that kind of challenges how we usually think about our behavior. Does humor actually undermine seriousness? Think about it for a sec. We so often assume that if someone is making a joke, they just aren't taking the situation seriously, right? We treat these two traits like they're total enemies. But what if we've been looking at this completely backward?
That brings us to Section 1, Redefining Seriousness and Humor.
We really tend to misunderstand the gravity of life, don't we? We think being a serious person means wearing this long face, keeping a cold distance from everyone, or just, carrying this heavy, gloomy air around with us everywhere. But true seriousness is redefined here simply as this: knowing exactly what you are occupied with. It's about focus. It's about presence. It's not about looking miserable at all. It's about being genuinely engaged with whatever is right in front of you.
And here's the thing about humor. It's meant to be a balancer, not an eraser. When humor is in its rightful place, it actually makes the truth more visible. It relaxes our emotions and, quite literally, helps us breathe. On the flip side, when humor is out of place, like when it tries to fill every single void, lightens every single word, and just mocks everything, well, that's when seriousness begins to erode. Because in a place where literally everything is treated as a joke, nothing can preserve its importance.
Our source text actually captures this whole dynamic in a really beautiful couplet. It says, "Humor grants the breath, yet without measure it scatters the mind. Seriousness carries the load, while humor helps the path unwind." Just sit with that imagery for a second. The breath and the load. You absolutely need both of those to walk the path of life.
Moving right along to Section 2, the trap of extremes.
This is absolutely crucial because it's a modern trap we all fall into. Over on the extreme left, where seriousness is completely closed off to humor, we just get gloom. Behaviors are heavily policed, people feel completely constricted, and thought actually becomes sterile because the soul just isn't allowed to stretch. Then, on the extreme right, we see the very modern tendency toward excessive humor. Let me ask you directly. Actually, be really honest with yourself here. Have you ever used a joke to dodge a difficult, serious conversation? Our source points out that turning everything into a joke is often just a tool to evade responsibility. It defers confrontation, creating the superficial lightness of escape rather than any genuine joy.
We also see this exact thing play out in our relationships. Humor can be a fantastic bridge, for sure. It reduces tension, it brings people closer together, but there is a stark warning here. When humor begins to belittle another person, it turns into a weapon. And at that point, humor doesn't build a bond, it dissolves it entirely. It causes injury. Similarly, if seriousness is used to suppress someone, it doesn't build trust, it just produces fear.
So, how on earth do we know when to use which? Well, the text introduces this really vital concept, basirat, or insight. If a matter is vital, humor must stand back. If a matter is suffocating the soul, humor has to step in. But there is no rulebook here. There's no ready-made recipe that can tell you exactly when to laugh or when to be serious. It requires deep, personal insight to adjust that transition seamlessly.
Which leads us to Section 3, Defining Inner Refinement.
The central unifying concept of all this balance, the hand that actually checks our internal scale, is called terbier, which translates to inner refinement. Refinement doesn't set humor and seriousness against each other. It's an art form, really. It's the silent balance you establish within your own inner world, and it functions completely independently of external rules. When a person actually learns this art, they know when to laugh and when to fall silent. Life neither grows too heavy to bear, nor does it become superficial.
The sheer harmony that this kind of refinement brings to the human heart is perfectly summarized right here. If humor knows its place, seriousness begins to shine. If seriousness stands with measure, the human heart finds peace divine.
Let's move on to Section 4, Conscience as a Compass.
The very first station of inner refinement is conscience, but our source asks us to look at conscience a bit differently. It's not just a restrictive break. Yes, of course, it speaks when a mistake is made, and it says, stop here.
But it also provides really dynamic guidance when you are doing things right, and it tells you to move at the right time. It's a dynamic mechanism of calibration, constantly keeping your inner scale perfectly balanced.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how this dynamic actually mirrors that humor and seriousness scale we looked at earlier, but it applies it entirely to how we treat ourselves. Without inner refinement, a person tends to be either way too harsh or way too slack with themselves. Excessive harshness totally exhausts your inner world until you are literally crushed under your own weight. But excessive slackness, that weakens your will, making you unable to even take yourself seriously. To avoid bouncing between those two extremes, you need willpower, which the text essentially calls the backbone of inner refinement. And notice how this completely redefines our typical understanding. Willpower is not having the freedom to do everything you desire. It is the conscious choice to forego something you absolutely have the power to do. It's not about suppressing your free will. It's about educating it so you don't just become a prisoner of your own momentary whims.
And that educated will? Well, it gets tested the most in solitude. The text notes, refinement is the hand held when no eye can see. An internal measure does not fall to chance easily. I really want you to focus on that phrase for a moment, when no eye can see, because that is exactly where our modern world struggles the most.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the portability of balance.
Today, there is this massive, almost society-wide attempt to substitute true inner refinement with external surveillance. Think about the whole camera culture we live in. There is order while the camera's on, right? But everyone scatters the second it's off. Constantly needing to be kept under control like that actually increases anxiety rather than building trust. But inner refinement? That is observed even when you are completely alone. It builds deep consistency. Not every word can be kept, but every word is taken seriously. Keeping promises to yourself builds profound self-respect, and someone who actually respects themselves will naturally respect others.
The ultimate benefit of cultivating this inner refinement is its absolute portability. External orders change, conditions differ, but as the final couplet reminds us, balance established within finds its path without. Refinement walks with the human, never falling to doubt. Wherever you go in life, whatever the situation, you take that balance right along with you. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one really powerful, provocative question to ask yourself today. Consider your own internal scale of humor and seriousness, of harshness and slackness. Think about the rules you follow every day and ask yourself, who are you when the camera is off?